Welcome back to She Can, where we lead with women's stories. At She Can, women lead by example because it's so much easier to be what you can see. We interview women from all over the world to hear their insights and experience to guide others. And I'm very excited to talk to Dr. Marcia Philbin this morning. Good morning, Marcia. You have
Good
a
morning.
PhD in chemistry. You're a Doctor of Science honoris causa at the Faculty of Pharmaceutical Medicine. You're part of the Management Today Women in Leadership Power List 2024. You're a chief executive, a chief disruptor, and a chief navigator. Tell us a little bit more about you and how you got to where you are today.
Well, first of all, thank you, Stephanie, for inviting me to be part of this um, uh, podcast, and thank you to the listeners for tuning in. So, I'm Marcia Philbin, and as Stephanie says, I'm currently the Chief Executive of the Faculty of Pharmaceutical Medicine, which is the body for doctors who develop medicines. And if you had told me when I was a little girl that I would be in this role, I would never have believed it. Never have believed it. So, in terms of my background, I'm from Birmingham in England.
Yeah.
My parents are from Jamaica, and I don't know in terms of the audience because it's probably I don't know if is it a global audience, Stephanie?
It's a
Uh,
global
yeah,
audience and
mm,
the ages is really wide. So you
yeah.
can really talk as broad as you want because we have girls as young as 16 tune in,
Mm.
18, and women of all ages really up
Yeah.
until mid 70s.
Okay, yeah. So my parents were from Jamaica, and in the 50s, 60s, the government put out a call for people from the Caribbean to come to the UK to help rebuild the country after the war. So my parents were part of that cohort who went to England, and my parents came from a poor part of Jamaica, and when they arrived, they went to Birmingham, and I was born a few years later, and it was quite a interesting time because there was a lot of racism and things like that. But for my parents, the key thing is for their children was to make a better life, and it was about education, 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 and then later on, when I was about 10, they realized that I had a disability, and the doctors found this, and it meant that I had to miss the last 2 years of school, primary school. And so by the time I went to secondary school, I went into the bottom set because I'd missed last 2 years of primary school. And so because no one really knew what my ability
Mm.
was. And so when I started secondary school, I was in the bottom set. And then I did the exams, and I kept topping all of them. So they moved me to the top set. And so through that, I carried on. And there was some, you know, things I had to get through in terms of low expectations from teachers. But, I was determined. I remember going home to my parents and saying, I'll show them. Right. So
Awesome.
that determination and fire was there. I'll show
Mm.
them. And so, I passed my exams, went on to did my A levels, and then I went to university to study chemistry. And what was interesting about that, I went to Aston University in Birmingham. And what was interesting about that is that at that time there were about 30 people in the class, and I think there was only about six women. And by the time we got to Christmas, there were four women.
Wow.
So, it's
Mm.
always not very, very male dominated, and, trying to get more women in. And chemistry is something that I just seem to gravitate to, and I just seem to be good at it. And so I followed through with that, and after my degree, I did a PhD in chemistry, and then following that, I received my first job with the Ministry of Defence, and that's quite an interesting story there as well, because my PhD supervisor was Dr. Amas, and he was a great guy, and after I got my degree. He came to me and said, come and do a PhD with me. Right, I think you're really good. So I said, okay, I'll come and do a PhD with you, which is good. And then when I was writing up my PhD and looking for jobs, he had a contract with the MOD and they were looking for a polymer chemist. So he told me about it. He said, you apply for that. But what was really good about him, there were other things. There was um, a lecturing job at, I think it was Manchester University. He said, you should apply for it. And he kept seeing things and pointing me in.
Mm.
And so one of the things that, particularly for young girls, I want you to, and actually, it's all women across. We hear about mentors, we hear about coaches, but we very rarely hear about sponsors. And the
Yeah.
thing about sponsors is that
Mm.
they will actively open doors for you.
Yeah.
And that's what Dr. Amos was, right? He was actively opening doors to him. And I will be forever grateful to him for doing that. So I applied for the job and I got it. And I worked in various roles in MOD, and ended up running a very large multi-million pound program. And then from that, where I was working, they were going to close the site, and then I thought, okay, then I'm not going to move to where they wanted to go. I want to do something different, and I was going to take my time. Anyway, I saw this job. And I thought that looks interesting. And it was in postgraduate medical education. And it's with the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health, which
Mm.
is the body that trains pediatricians.
Mm.
And I just thought about my transferable skills. And the things that I was picking out from this role was things like project management, delivery, that kind of thing. And I thought, okay, give it a go. Anyway, I applied. I was called for an interview. By the time I got back to my job, a couple of hours later, they called and offered me the job. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. I was offered a job. And so I went there as the assistant director for research and policy.
Wow.
And I was there for 3 years doing really good things. And it was a really good job, really fantastic place to work. And I thought, okay, I'm assistant director, time for me to become a director. And so that's what I was looking for, director roles. And then I was on the train and I was looking at some job sites and I saw this role for chief executive of the Faculty of Pharmaceutical Medicine. And I thought to myself, because as assistant director, I was running, I was part of the leadership of a division that had about 35 people,
Mm.
4 million pound budget, and Faculty of Pharmaceutical Medicine was a small, not-for-profit body, and at the time they had about 8, 9 people staff and a budget of about about 1.7 million. And I thought, that's just like a small division. So why don't I apply? And also because it was doctors who developed medicines. And I thought, well, my chemistry background, I understand, right? I can, talk about this with them. And so I applied. And I got the job. So there was me thinking that my next move was going to be a director, and I ended up becoming a chief executive. So my other lesson there is sometimes you think you're going down one route, and then an opportunity arises, and you just pivot to think, actually, I'm going to go for that one. And and that was 5 years ago, and I'm still here. And FPM is when I started, it was including me, it's about 9 people. We're now 16,
Mm.
and our income has gone from 1.7 to 2.2. But the thing I'm really proud of is 2.2 million, actually. And what the thing I'm really and our membership, we have about 1,600 doctors as well, and we're
Mm.
looking to grow that even more. But the thing I'm most proud of is the energy that I've helped to inject into FPM, because it was a nice, steady little organization, and it did education, it did exams, and it members. But I've managed to bring in diverse income streams. But most importantly, um, I've helped it to celebrate because it never entered awards before.
Mm.
And since I've arrived, we've won multiple awards. Right, the MEMCOM Awards. We won the highly commended award for best event. Um, we won we won the silver award for our events as well. And recently, my deputy, he won an award for future leader. So that's something else I've done, is to bring people in and nurture them and encourage them and coach them. And I was awarded in 2022, yes, the highly commended leadership award from MEMCOM, which was just fantastic, absolutely brilliant. And then you know, uh, a couple of years back, I was awarded the. I couldn't believe it. It was honorary doctorate. I could not believe it from my university. So if you told me that I'd end up when I was growing up, that I'd have PhDs, I would have believed it. I mean, one would have been amazing because I got my PhD in chemistry, but to be awarded an honorary Doctor of Science. That is just incredible. And then to top it all, of course, last year, the management today,
Yes,
the power
Marcia.
list.
I love listening to you because the energy is literally jumping out from the screen. And I love that each time you couldn't believe you got it. And I also love that you spoke about the sponsors and what difference it is to be a mentor or a role model versus a sponsor who actively helps you find opportunities, believe in yourself, and go for things. And I think that's a really important thing for our listeners because all of us can be a sponsor for somebody else. And your professor believed in you and
Yeah.
opened opportunities for you. And I think that is so instrumental, especially in this day and age where women are still rare in the STEM subjects, right? So
Yes.
I'm wondering, Masa, what do you think we will see for women in science in the next decade? We are very underrepresented.
Yeah.
It is still it's an area that is not inclusive, still to this day and age. So what changes do you see? And I'm wondering also, how can we bring those changes about?
I think this forums like this is fantastic. She can, and bringing people like me and to talk about our stories. So thank you for doing this because that's so important. You know, it's really interesting because I think back to because my mum used to say, I don't know where she gets it from. My mom, she died last year, and I did the eulogy for her.
Mm,
And the thing that struck me, mother was one of her mother had 16 children, six died, and she was so she's one of 10 that survived. And her mother was widowed when my mum was six. and her mother gave birth to the last child 2 weeks later after her husband died. And so my mother grew up in abject poverty in
mm,
Jamaica, and she used to talk about sometimes, right, all they had to eat was vegetable water. She had one dress, and the mother used to keep them in and on a Sunday wash it so that they have something to go to school. No shoes or anything. And she had to leave school when she was about 10
mm.
so that because the children had to go and work,
Yeah.
right? And so, and the thing that I see with my mum, the thing that really jumped out was that she worked. That's the thing I always remember. And in fact, it's the thing I remember about my parents. They just worked and worked and worked and worked. Nothing came for free,
Mm,
right? Because they knew the value of things, and they learned very early on that they had to rely on themselves. It's not because their parents didn't want to help them. They just didn't have it.
yeah.
They just didn't have it.
Yeah.
And so, when my parents came to UK and they see this education, that's, I mean, and this is the thing, people in the UK might go on about, oh, the education system's rubbish, blah. What people coming from outside in see, you've got free education. It's free. It's there. Take advantage of it. And that's what I did. And that's what girls need to do. Yes, it's not perfect, but take advantage of it. I mean, I was told so many times, oh, don't be ridiculous. You'll never get to university or anything like that. You don't know what you're doing. And that's why when I went home and told my parents, I'll show them because I knew what I was capable of, right? So you will have detractors and women will have detractors, but don't listen to them.
Yeah.
Know your worth, know what you're capable of. And I knew what I was capable of. In the same way, my mother knew what she was capable of. And, it was worse for them in terms of the racism that they had to endure in the 60s and 70s. But they kept their eye on why they were there. And that was to make a better life for their children and for themselves. And they did that. And so off the gift that they gave me and my brothers was this free education.
Mm.
And I used it. I mean, it was a bog. I mean, I don't know this word, the term bog standard comprehensive school, right? And that's what it was. But guess what? I made the most of it. I went to the library. I read the books. I did the homework. I read around the subjects, right? Because I knew I had to do more than everybody else in order to get what I wanted to do. And that's what women have to do, right? You have to do more because no one's going to give it to you, right? You have to go after it yourself. And here's me, a black woman, right, doing science, doing chemistry, right, and underestimated all the time. I mean, when I turned up to work, right, he came up and said, "Are you the new clerk?"
Mm.
Right. And that's the other thing. People will look at you and tell you what you're doing rather than ask you, "Oh, what do you do?" No, I'm the new clerk. And I went, "No, I'm a scientist."
Yeah,
And that was other women. That was other women.
yes, it happens all the time that we don't stick up for our sisters and we think that there isn't enough space for all of us. Marcia, I think you said something very important. It's this notion that don't look for the reasons you don't belong, right? Just we have to disassociate from that notion and that
Yes.
narrative and just forge our path. If someone thinks, chemistry or physics is for you, go for it
Yes.
because there aren't enough women in those subjects and we need more women. So,
Yeah.
Marcia, what tips would you give to girls that are interested in any of the STEM subjects?
If you're interested in the STEM subjects, then study them. And as I said, right, read around the subjects. Do the extra work. But also, it depends on which stages you are. So if you're at university, um, you have the bodies like the Royal Society of Chemistry for chemistry, and for physics, you have the Institute of Physics. For engineering, you've got the Royal Academy of Engineering, and you've got all the different ones like the Institute of Engineering and Technology,
Mm.
or the IEEE. Right, chemical engineering will have theirs. Get involved in those. That's one thing that I did. I got involved in the Royal Society of Chemistry. And and again, it was Dr. Amos, right? And he got me involved in macro group. So you got the Royal Society of Chemistry, and he's got the different groups, different chapters. In America, you might call them, but you got these different groups. So I got involved in macro group, and then I joined a committee, right? So I was an ordinary member, and then I became the treasurer. So I became treasurer for 4 years. And you know the great thing about that? It's the transferable skills that you pick up. And so don't underestimate yes, you have the science bit, it's a science and this understanding, right? But also the transferable skills are so important. So being treasurer, budgets, right? Learning about budgets, how to manage budgets, how to do forecasts and things like that. And one of the things I did as well, I wanted to leave my mark. I wanted to do something. So I organized an international conference. When I think about it now, I think you must have been mad. It was something I wanted to do. And at the time, super molecular polymers were a big thing, like things like dendrimers, right? And so I organized the first international conference on dendrimers. Uh, and uh, and that was fantastic. That was fantastic. And you know, my mum, when I've been going through the things from my mum, I couldn't believe it. She kept the program. So I didn't kid. I mean, I was doing all these things, and when I moved on to a different area, I must have forgotten to bring things like that. But I used to share everything with my mum. She kept everything. She was so proud,
Yeah.
and I found it, the original program.
Oh,
And I said, "Oh, thank you! I couldn't believe it."
yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Marcia, and tell us a little bit about your leadership style. What kind of a leader are you? What kind of a leader do you want to be?
Very interesting when I was thinking about this question, because the first thing that came into mind was hands off, hands off type of leader. And I thought, no, seriously, think about this. And I'm the type of leader, I would say it's more a coaching style,
Mm,
right? A coaching supportive style, because, I employ people and I employ people because they are capable. Right, and they know how to do their role. Now, I will be there to guide them, right, and help them understand what the overarching goals are, and they have objectives, right, and they understand and show them that golden thread from the objectives of the organization right through to their personal objectives. But I'm not going to tell people how to do it
mm,
because, you know, that's for them to decide how to do it, right? I will lay out the framework. Yeah, this is, for example, we have an annual symposium. So the events person, they will deliver that annual symposium. How she does it, that's up to her, right? As long as it's done properly and efficiently and effectively, right? I'm not that kind of like micromanaging, hovering style. That's not me. That's not me at all. But if there is a problem, right, and something needs resolving, I will quickly switch into pace setting mode because sometimes you have to get in there, take over to solve the problem.
yeah,
And in doing so, I will help the person to learn, develop, and grow.
yeah. I
So
love
I would say that's my style.
I love what you just said. Marcia, what do you feel are your biggest lessons all throughout your career? You've achieved so much and you never thought you would achieve all of that. Um, Tell us a bit about these lessons that really serve you now every day.
That's a really important question. And I was mulling over this one. And I go back to me as a child when my disability took hold, right,
Mm,
with my legs,
mm,
and I had to have all those operations and miss 2 years of school, and then put into the bottom set of the when I started secondary school. And the interesting thing about that, I just accepted it. I accepted it and I made the most of it. And I didn't allow it to hold me back. And I think that's a really important lesson when I think back on my life is that, you have challenges and rather than succumb to them, right, you think, okay, this is what the situation is. How am I going to make the best of it? And so, yes, I was in the bottom set, but I still worked hard and I came top in the test and I came top in the exams. And that meant that they'd moved me up to the higher set where I could work at a higher level. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned. And when I think about me, um, I had some challenges when I was in the MOD, some, you know, really sexist behaviors that I had to endure. But you know what? I circumvented them. And what was really interesting is that there was a time when I was so distraught about what was going on, and I thought, I'm going to leave. I have to leave. And then a few weeks later, there was a change in leadership. And this leader, man, and this is interesting, it's a man. And this is another sponsor. And he called me into the office and he said, I've heard a lot about you and the great work that you're doing. That was a shock. I couldn't believe what? Because previously I wasn't hearing this. And what that told me is that people saw what I was capable, they saw what I was doing. And for one reason or another, they couldn't challenge the leadership that was there at the time. But something obviously happened because that leadership was dispensed with, new leaders were brought in, and they knew about me. They saw me. They saw the work that I was doing. And as a result of that, I was promoted to become a business group manager of 50 scientists and engineers and a budget of 4 million.
Marcia, I
And
love,
I wouldn't believe that.
yeah, I love what you just said because I always think there is a real thing to the pause. And when you have challenges, take a step back and wait it out before you take decisions or react to a challenging situation, because sometimes circumstances change and
Yes.
they change in your favor. And we so often don't think about that when we are in a situation that we feel we don't like, we can't handle, we don't want to lean into these uncomfortable feelings and challenges. And often this pause is a real reset and things can change in your favor. And if they don't, maybe you have to take a decision.
Yes.
But I love what you said. So you said what you're most proud of. I'm wondering, what are the challenges? Are there challenges you're facing, Marcia? And what are they? And how do you reframe them?
The challenge is we live in a world which is changing rapidly.
Yeah.
And and I am a firm believer in lifelong learning.
Mm.
Don't think that, right, I've got my degree, that's it, I'm done. I'm a PhD, I'm done. No, no. Right from the outset, I've carried on with my education. So when I started at MOD, um, and they had a lot of educational things. I even did something on law for scientists. It was a one day. Anyway, I thought that'd be interesting. I've embraced learning, right? And the thing about learning is that you're investing in yourself. It's for your benefit. And I did a diploma in management studies. I've done executive training, and just this Christmas, right, that interim period between Christmas and New Year's, I did a Coursera course on AI. Right, it was called AI for Everyone because I thought I'm hearing a lot about AI. I want to understand this, right? I just want to understand the basics, and it was a fantastic course, right? AI for everyone. And so the world is changing, and it's in terms of remaining relevant, right? Remaining up to date. You've got to invest in yourself. And that's the thing I would say to girls and women, right? Learning is not just something you do at a certain stage in your life. It's going to be throughout your life. And you don't have to take a course, right? You can go to workshops, you can go to network events, you can go to a seminar, right? You can read a book, right? But the thing I would say to women and girls, and I said it before previously, get involved in your society or professional body for your profession because that's where you will build your networks. That's where you will learn from others, right? And one of the things that I got involved in, because when I became a chief executive, it was in June 2019, I became chief executive of FPM. 16th of March 2020, we went into lockdown. So I was having to manage this organization, the staff, the membership. Everyone's looking to me as the leader. And it was all on me. And so I had to be there for everyone, have this show positivity and assure everyone everything's fine. But who was there for me? Yes, I had my husband and my family, but professionally, who was there for me? And that's why I got involved in various networks of CEOs. So Memcom CEO, there was another one called IAL, Institute of Something Leadership, and then also the Academy of Medical Royal Colleges, the CEO group,
Mm.
right? So look out, reach out to various groups. And I don't just have one network, I've got various networks because each one provides me with something different.
Yeah. Marcia, so tell us about the plans and goals for 2025.
2025 is going to be an interesting year for FPM because we've got a new president and we need to develop our new strategy. And I'm really excited about that because, particularly for pharmaceutical medicine, it's not just about developing medicine. Pharmaceutical medicine now encompasses AI, digital technologies, and people are working differently,
Yeah.
right? Staff are working differently. We're doing things differently. And so that's what's really, really exciting. In terms of my personal life, I've got twin boys. That's the other thing. And they will turn 21 this year,
Wow.
right? And they're both at the same university, but one is doing his year in industry. He's doing computing, so he's doing his year in industry. And the other one who's doing maths, right? He's in his final year. So we're going to have a graduation this year.
Brilliant.
And then another graduation next year. But it's really fantastic to see the boys grow and develop and chart their own path. And so it's supporting them. So I'm quite excited about that as well. And
You
then for
know,
me, in terms of my own professional, as I said, right, I did this AI course. I've got another one that I want to do. It's called generative AI. I want to really understand that. And then think about, okay, it's a tool, right? It's not going to replace jobs, right? People keep saying it's going to replace jobs. Yeah, it's some of the lower level in terms of, and it's not jobs, it's processes. That's what it's going to do, right? It's going to bring efficiencies. But with that efficiency, what opportunities does that bring? It means it frees people to do more higher level things. And so that's one of the things I'm thinking about.
and I love that, and that's so true. And there is a real call to action in terms of upskilling, you know, pivoting, being flexible, being
Yeah.
creative, and definitely being curious and
Yes.
always learn.
Yeah.
Marcia, what do you want people to take away from your story?
I hope that people will see that I am someone who born into humble circumstances, um, went to just normal school where teachers didn't have much, you know, didn't think that people like me would amount to much and very little encouragement. And so I had to encourage myself, but the encouragement came from my family as well. But I didn't allow any of that to distract from what I wanted to achieve. It's funny, right? One of my friends um, said exactly that to me, actually. She said that she just gave up, right? Because the teachers couldn't, so she couldn't be bothered. And she said, but you didn't. And I think that's the message. I'm not someone who gives up. I've got a stubborn streak as well. If you tell me I can't do something, I will find a way. I might not be able to do the exact thing, but I can do something. And I think that's the message, is that if you know and believe in yourself, you will be amazed at what you can achieve. But be flexible, because sometimes you think you're going to go down one path when actually something happens and takes you on a different path. And that path might not be what you want, but it can actually provide you with something just as fulfilling. So don't say no to opportunities.
Marcia, thank you so much for telling your very powerful story. This conversation is full of guidance and amazing things to think about. So I can't thank you enough for your time and for leading with your story.
Thank you so much.